talking about teaming, and we're talking about how important it is. We're talking about the dynamics of change that may happen. How does that idea of emotion, because you touched upon this before when you said the word conflict, right? There's almost like a precursor to conflict, and that would be what we're talking about. I've seen people fired for having an emotional moment at a project in front of a client that was just zero tolerance, right? Yeah. So it's not like in the movies where we're watching Bad Bosses or something like this. There's a real consequence if we don't learn to get along.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in front, a client or a customer, right? So there is a huge consequence. And I think that sometimes what people are doing is they're letting it build up internally. They're putting up with situations that are really untenable for them, thinking they can't say something. They're not holding their boundaries, and there may be a lot of organizational cultural reasons why they're having a hard time doing that. It might be the culture doesn't support it. So it's very relational in that way. How are the people operating within their culture, and what do they feel they're allowed to do? But ultimately, since we're all responsible for ourselves, when people are getting to the point where they're exploding in a way that they weren't able to stop, you need to ask stress level, what's going on for them that they haven't taken care of? Or how is the organization treating them in a way that they felt that they couldn't take care of themselves?
Doesn't conflict on teams affect our ability to think and maybe even be creative?
Yeah, conflict will unresolved. So that I think of conflict in two ways. There could be really positive conflict because you're having a passionate debate. And it gets you somewhere that's even more creative and innovative. And then there's the conflict you're talking about that's destructive, that usually doesn't get resolved, or someone's putting somebody down, or it's a personal attack. People aren't speaking up about important things. And that kills creativity. It kills innovation. It kills productivity. I mean, it is one of the number one things that organizations have to learn how to handle. People have to handle. And ideally, I like to have teams have agreements around how they're going to handle conflict. Like, this has actually been discussed. They have a designed agreement that says, if a conflict occurs, and hopefully it will. If we're all just sitting around being nice, probably something's not being said. Right. When a conflict occurs, this is how we, we'll handle it within a certain amount of time. We'll handle it this particular way. This is what we'll do, and everyone agrees to those ground rules.
What is the delineating factor, if there is one thing that you think kind of sets an organization apart in a good way? What do you think has to be the juice in that?
Generally speaking, it is their emphasis on their employees. It's how they're treating their people, and of course their customers. But you could have great customer service and not be treating your people well. I think it's how they treat their people. Absolutely. What is and their, as a byproduct of that, how their culture is developing. What kind of culture do they have? How do they treat their people? What kind of turnover do they have? Is this considered a good place to work? Because people enjoy themselves, they feel challenged, they feel like there's a reasonable culture and a reasonable environment, and they feel supported. So that, and in those environments, typically people feel a little more comfortable being vulnerable. There's a little bit more psychological safety. I think almost all organizations could still do a better job with it. There's a handful that are probably superstars, but most organizations aren't really there. But that's the delineating factor I really see. And to that point of, Sully, which I actually have seen that. And one of the things that struck me, how calm he stayed, but also how they were looking, the National Transportation Safety Board was their job, but how this man had saved 155 lives and they were still looking for the thing he did wrong.
Yeah.
And that struck me how in organizations we see that so often in a way. Let's find the thing that you did wrong. Or if we catch you doing something wrong, let's really focus on that.
Right.
And let's forget to talk about, all the things that you did really well.
Right.
And that really kills people's souls.